lives and guarantee equal access to assistance for all citizens, especially in the most critical moments. This means that accessibility cannot be an afterthought. The needs of persons with disability and other persons must be systematically integrated into emergency preparedness, response and recovery so that information, evacuation, communication and services reach everyone without any exceptions. This is precisely why AccessibleEU, together with Zero Project, has organized today's sessions. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is José Luis Borao. I'm the Deputy Manager of the European Accessibility Resource Center, the European Commission. And I would like to briefly introduce what AccessibleEU is. AccessibleEU is the European Accessibility Resource Center, a great knowledge hub supporting, here. That's it. As I was saying, it's a great knowledge center supporting the implementation of European accessibility legislation, including the European knowledge, throughout training for professionals, raising awareness, conducting studies and research on emerging technologies, compiling best practices in accessibility, etc. You can see in the slide, we have organized a lot, our targets we have obtained in these 3 years of activity of AccessibleEU, more than almost 300 events with more than 59,000 participants, a great community of practice where I would like to invite all of you who are not still part of it, with more than 5,000 members. We have created a great online library with more than 450 good practices on accessibility all around Europe, and not only in Europe, but also beyond Europe, and almost 400 big bibliographical references on accessibility coming from the different state members in the European Union. So, and all of this with one clear objective: to make accessibility a reality across policies, services, and technologies. And now, for me, it's a great pleasure to pass the floor to Klaus Hogner, friend of us, our AccessibleEU national expert in Austria, who will guide us through today's program and introduce our speakers. Thank you very much, and I wish you all an inspiring and engaging event. Klaus?
Thank you, José Luis. It's a great honor for me to be here today. As mentioned, I'm the Austrian expert in the initiative of AccessibleEU, and I'm a long-lasting friend of the Zero Project, the so-called Zero Project ambassador, because I think I started here in 2008 or 2009 or 2010, around that, yeah. I'm so old, yeah, so that I can't remember. I'm a 60-year-old European man with a suit, and I have gray hairs, for those who can see me. And it's a great honor for me, as I said it before, yeah, to introduce the speakers. The first speaker, I can't see her now. She was there with the stars. The star of the stars was Inmaculada, Placencia, Porrero. Sorry for my Spanish. I think everybody knows her in this house, and if you don't know her, you should know her, because she's the. I heard it in an event in Spain when I was there. She's the mother of the European Accessibility Act. She's one of the most influential architects of disability and accessibility policy in Europe. At the European Commission, she has led the development and the implementation of landmark frameworks such as the European Accessibility Act and the Disability Strategy, shaping how accessibility moves from principles to enforceable market requirements across all the member states of the 27 European EU states. Her work bridges regulation, standardization, and innovation, ensuring that accessibility is not treated as a social policy alone, but as an integral component of the single market and the digital transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, and I hope you can change it now, the technique, yeah. Please welcome Inmaculada, Placencia, Porrero. And one remark I was told I have to tell you, yeah. If there is a QR code shown on the screen, please take a picture of the QR code and register for this event, because that's a necessary precondition for the Commission to, that this event is recognized as an accessible EU conference point or event. Please, yeah? I will remember you after the next point, but now to Inmaculada, please, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Klaus, and José Luis for this nice introduction. It's really great to see that our resource center, our contract AccessibleEU is present in the conference, and the Zero Project conference, where also I've been there from the very beginning, and it's really great to see it growing and getting so much attention worldwide. With this presentation, with this session, we are addressing an area, a very specific area of accessibility, or from an accessibility perspective, that is really having international interest. The matter of preparedness and response in emergency situations is really very actual. And what we see is that disaster events make disaster recovery more difficult for persons with disabilities. And often issues related to equality and accessibility are kind of neglected in existing emergency plans and civil protection assistance. We see that it is really important to ensure that accessibility is well present into these policies. And in our European disability strategy, this is an action that features clear for improvement. In fact, what I'm going to briefly talk to you today is about the element of accessibility related to the digital world that is very relevant in these emergency situations. I'm going to focus on the provisions that the European Accessibility Act has in order for persons with disabilities to be able to reach out for support, and in cases of disaster situations, in cases of emergency situation, and how I'm going to discuss how important it is that this accessibility element features in preparedness infrastructures, and that is tested in this type of exercises. Well, the European Accessibility Act contains a number of products and services for which certain accessibility requirements are to be complied with. And in this case of emergency, there are three particular elements that are essential for persons with disabilities to be able to call and then receive the services and the support of the services in emergency situations. The first one is the devices, the telephones and alike, on which a person with a disability should be able to use, and the Act contains clear requirements to that effect. The second is the telecommunications, electronic communication service, the Act requires these services to be accessible for persons with disabilities. For these two, the devices and the telecom service, the obligations have already triggered in June last year. So the Act requires that in addition to the user interface, in addition to information about it, there would be in the service, in the telephone service, the possibility to use real-time text and total conversation. This means voice, this means real-time text and video, synchronize where video is provided. Now, in addition to these two elements, there is the element of the response, which in Europe is done by the so-called PSAPs, which the Accessibility Act requires that when they receive a call, that they answer these emergency communications, and in particular to the European emergency number 112, being accessible, using exactly the same means of communication that the call that enters into the center. Now, the European Accessibility Act use the same definitions and concepts that are in the general telecommunications legislation in Europe in relation to what is total conversation, on what are electronic communication services, emergency communications, and it defines itself what it is real-time text, and it requires that the services that are set in the acts, including this one, would be interoperable with assistive technology, because many persons with disabilities use assistive technologies in order to be able to talk by phone. It is important to note that the European Accessibility Act has strong enforcement mechanisms. It starts soft by having economic operators declaring compliance with the obligations of the Act, but then it empowers users, it empowers persons with disabilities as consumers to be able to take action in front of the courts, in front of relevant administrative bodies to make complaints and to claim that the obligations in the Act are complied with. The Act, these enforcement provisions aim to achieve remedial action. This is the main point. It's not about punishing, it's not about compensation, it's really to achieve compliance. At the end of the day, what we want is that when a person with a disability is in an emergency situation and tries to call 112, that 112, the telecom operations, the telephones themselves, the devices are accessible for persons with disabilities. This is a very important provision because here we are talking about lives. We are risking lives of people, and it is really essential that these provisions are complied with. Let me say that the Accessibility Act refers to these technical, or let's say functional requirements. I mentioned real-time text, total conversation, and emergency communications, but it also refers to functions, practice, policies, procedures, and alterations in the operation of the services targeted to address the needs of persons with disabilities and ensuring interoperability with assistive technologies. It is really important that this concept that we had at the beginning of from the person to the service and back to the person, it is really kept in mind when the implementation of these important provisions are happening. So hence the Act refers that these provisions, these requirements are there to maximize the foreseeable use by persons with disabilities in the answering of emergency communications to the single European number by the most appropriate PSAPs, and shall achieve by including, again, functions, practices, policies, procedures, and alteration targeted to address the needs of persons with disabilities. And as I said, it requires to use the same means of communications that were for which the call it was received.
Sorry to jump in here. I'm the bad guy. Yeah.
Yes,
but I
yes,
have to be the timekeeper. We
Yes.
are 2 minutes over time now. If
Okay.
you want to conclude it, please.
Yes.
One more minute,
I am
and
concluding.
then really I have to hand over to the next panel.
Yes,
Otherwise, we cut
Okay.
the time from them. Okay. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. I was keeping, I thought we started at 41, but anyway, doesn't matter. So what I wanted to conclude with is that these provisions, which are targeted in the European markets, in essence, they are relevant for any part of the world because persons with disabilities need this accessibility, whatever the emergency number and emergency communication is. And this, until it's properly functioned, will continue to feature in our European strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities. And we count on persons with disabilities to contribute, to go to the surveillance authorities, to tell when there are problems detected, because as I said, this is a matter of risking lives. So thank you very much for your attention. I was reaching the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I'm the bad guy, I'm sorry here. So I have to hand over, I have the pleasure to hand over to the distinguished panel that we have about users and stakeholders' perspective in times of crisis, led by, and my Finnish is a little bit bad, I'm sorry, Terhi Taminen. She is the AccessibleEU national expert for Finland and a long-standing practitioner in turning accessibility policy into operational reality. She works at the intersection of public administration, service design, and standardization, and she's supporting organizations in implementing accessibility requirements in digital services, procurement, and everyday public services. So I don't think that I have to say any more words. Terry will present the panel, and I have to say, please, when you see the QR code, take a picture and register for the event. Yeah, and I'm also the bad guy for this panel. I have to say, after the time, when time is running out, I will come up on the stage and okay. Thank you. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to moderate this very important session today. As it was mentioned, I come from Finland, and the topic is really close to my heart. As an accessibility entrepreneur dealing with the practical issues daily, we are owned by the company who actually has been delivering civil defense shelters since 1987 all over the Finland. So this topic is really close to my heart. Probably you know that in Finland, in Europe there are two countries, Finland and Switzerland, who is really forerunners in preparedness when it comes to the civil defense shelters. In Finland, there are shelters for about 54,000 all around the Finland. And it is really clever that instead of having a civil defense shelter, like a big shelters there and there, actually in Finland, there are small shelters all around the Finland, countryside, cities. They are size of 20 square meters up to 135 square meters, and they are attached to the really near where people live. They are attached to the apartments, the homes, universities, schools, department stores, everywhere. So builders are obligated to build a civil defense shelter when they build a new building. The system is really good because when it comes to the psychological barriers, people know the shelter is really near, and they are really hard shelters, they are protective, and normally in peacetime they are used as a storage, gyms, hobby rooms, so people are really familiar with the civil defense shelters in normal times. Times of crisis, there is 72 hours to get the civil defense shelter ready for the crisis time. So it's normally peacetime use, and then 72 hours it has to be turned into the crisis time use. And the responsibility of doing that switch is for the people in the community who are in charge of this building. You know, the building people who are living there, or the community, the school, university. So that's one very essential, like a very core thing in Finnish society what comes to the preparedness of crisis system. And I think it's very wise. But even in Finland, the one thing which is missing is the topic that we are talking today. We are the holistic approach from communication until services, it's lacking. And this is why this topic is really, really important today. When crisis comes, normal barriers come even worse for people with disabilities. So now it is time to act towards understanding, the real understanding of diverse needs, and this is the topic what we are talking today. We cannot design emergency systems, we cannot design communication systems without understanding and including people with different kind of disabilities into the design processes and all emergency management. So today we are focusing on accessibility and user needs in times of crisis, and why it is very important for safety and resilience. And we have very excellent speakers who bring different but complementary perspectives to this topic. First we hear Lydia Best, President, European Federation of Hard of Hearing people, who will share the needs of people with hard of hearing and what can we learn about COVID. Then we will have Stéphanie Cadieux, Canada's Chief Accessibility Officer, who will present Canada's approach to accessibility in emergencies, including the Accessible Canada Act. And finally, go Canada! I like that. And then we have Alejandro. How do we do it now? Deputy Director, European Disability Forum, who will bring European-wise perspective for people with disabilities all around the Europe. Excellent. So, one practical note, each panelist will speak each by each, and then in the end we have time for questions from the audience. So, let us begin now with Lydia, and our first speaker. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, may I ask for the next slide? I would like to talk about the hard of hearing people in the times of crisis. But first, to understand a little bit more, it's about the numbers. Sometimes people ask about numbers. And I'm bringing up the World Report on Hearing from the World Health Organization, talking about the population of people experiencing hearing difficulties, which is steadily increasing due to many factors. One of them is listening to very loud music, by the way. Something we can actually moderate and make sure we don't. But there are other reasons. Then is also aging population. And by 2050, actually 1 in 4 will have a hearing loss by the estimates of the World Health Organization. So we have a big group of people in any society who need more accessible ways of contacting emergency services. But also, hearing loss is, and how it actually affects a person, is very much an individual situation. One hard of hearing person will not be experiencing in the same way as another hard of hearing person, you may know. And that is also important. There is a huge diversity of experience. But also it changes over the lifetime. Today you might be hearing not too badly. Few years later you might have lost completely your hearing. Your needs are slightly changed. So when we also looking at the population, and when I mention age, we already have 1/3 of people over 65 years of age who experience hearing difficulties. So one more thing to add is, because some people think, oh, you get hearing aids or cochlear implants like myself, everything is done. No. Hearing with hearing devices is not the same as with natural hearing. We still need accessibility. Next slide. Thank you. So bringing COVID. Yeah, let's stop talking about COVID, but actually no, because COVID has been quite recent and we're still learning lessons from that. And have we actually learned them? So the example is of a public announcement across European Union countries, where we've seen, and not only, globally too, we have seen most of the countries were not fully prepared, of course, for to make sure everyone has equal access to televised information with live captioning and sign language in translations. It wasn't a case of just, yes, it's there. It wasn't. Then we also have seen lack of accessible broadcast during the national crisis, which are the breach of human rights. And that's what we saw as the result of it. And it did result in exclusion of people with hearing loss. And then what happened with emergency themselves services and government services? There was lack of planning for multiple ways of contact besides the telephones. The first thing that started to prop up as soon as the crisis started, here are the telephone calls, here are the telephone numbers. Not everybody can use them. And then there was also lack of information, even if it existed, about the alternative ways of contacting services, for example, via text. So what we need to see, and we would like to see, is that the emergency planning, the response, and communication are largely based on ability to, what we have seen during COVID, that the emergency planning, the response was all largely based on ability to hear and understand, and on top of that, to speak. Next one. So when we are from European Federation, we are looking at the things, what can be done better and how we can make sure we improve on this, on our understanding. I've decided for this particular conference to bring the sketch which is familiar for many people working in accessibility, accessibility practitioners. When we talk about the disability, look through the lens of permanent, temporary, and situational. When I'm telling about 1 in 4 not hearing very well, it's actually being expanded when you look at this. Because not only permanently people have hearing loss already, they are deaf or hard of hearing. When temporary, they might have an ear infection, the eardrum may burst, bump, go off, whatever. You can't hear suddenly, at this situation. And when you've got the situational disability in a way, but you cannot hear very well because the environment is so loud. So that's why we are advocating for 112, for example, being in multimodal way accessible, being by voice, be it by short messaging services, be it by real-time text, and of course total conversation. Because we cannot just think of one way of accessing. In the United Kingdom, where I am actually residing, this is what we have already for the emergency services. And that's the good way forward, except for total conversation. Because we've got the VRS, the sign language directly. So it is also important to remember that with high level of stress, we also decrease our ability to understand the instructions when we are communicating with services. Next slide. Maybe I have to do it, yeah. So, just to conclude, what the crisis planning needs to have is must reflect diverse needs. Planning must include multiple ways for public to contact the services and for the services to reach to the public. It is two-way conversation. The broadcasts themselves must include live subtitling and captioning because it's the basic information access. It has to be provided. Emergency services must include also text-based communication, but there is one caveat here, shall not require pre-registration, especially to use relay services. Many countries actually are implementing services which require via apps or different ways, but we pre-register, and some of the information is pretty intrusive. We should not be having to give it to that. Hearing people don't have to do that, so why we have to do that? That's a simple question. And then, of course, all national plans must be consulted with the organizations representing the community. That is no-brainer in a way. And multimodal planning, response, and communication is the only way forward. Thank you. I think I finished.
Thank you, Lydia. You really clearly showed how these multimodal communications and services are really, really essential, and they have to be intuitive and they have to be quick, you know. And I think it's a good lesson to learn, and the picture is really, really clear. So thank you very much. And also it shows quickly the gaps, how they appear when they are lacking. But now we will move on from the needs of people with hard of hearing to the different kind of topic from Canada, as it was earlier said. And I'm very pleased to introduce Stéphanie Cadieux and to ask her to stay out.
All right, let's do that. Thank you very much, and thank you to Zero Project and AccessibleEU for asking me to join you today. I think sharing our knowledge and our innovations across countries and across the world is so important, so valuable. And so with that, just a very quick sort of state of the union for Canada on this work. For context, in Canada, we're working primarily on a day-to-day basis, looking at primary emergency scenarios dealing with natural disasters, earthquakes, wildfires, flooding, and that sort of thing. Because in any given year, thousands of Canadians face evacuation situations, and those happen very quickly. In 2024, for example, 44,000 people had to be evacuated very urgently. Can I get you to move the slide? Thank you. Because of this, I think we don't talk a lot about emergency preparedness in society at large. There are agencies that think about this, and individuals think about it when there's a moment, but we don't think about it enough. But recently in Canada, now in 2019, so a few years back, we passed the Accessible Canada Act, and the purpose is to make Canada barrier-free. The responsibility is being placed on organizations to remove all of the barriers proactively. But the key is that they have to do it in collaboration with people with disabilities. So organizations responsible for emergency planning are having to rethink the way they do this. Organizations are having, employers are having to think about how they do preparedness for their employees. As a result, there are more than 6,000 agencies across the country that are having to think about this in a new way. Go ahead. Slide. At the federal level, a lot of the work is being done by an agency called Accessibility Standards Canada. And they bring together experts with lived experience as well as experts in various technical fields to put together standards and guides to assist organizations in that work. they are currently, or have currently, a draft standard on emergency egress. And what's exciting about that is that it forces organizations to start to think about emergency egress needs for people with disabilities, the practices and procedures, emergency communications, illumination and emergency power, elevators, emergency signage and wayfinding, and safety equipment. But I think most importantly is that it focuses in on the need for personalized emergency plans for people with disabilities. So for example, ASC in their own organization has ensured that each individual who works there, and a large proportion of them have disabilities, have a personalized emergency plan that is shared sort of amongst the team. Next. Another area where there's a lot of work going on is around emergency response and alert systems. So similar to Lydia, those same conversations are happening in Canada, both for emergency service and response, like 911 or 112, but also in regards to how broadcast emergency alerts are sent and in what formats. Because up until now, very little consideration, I would argue, has been given to a large percentage of the population that needs to receive that information in a different way, or certainly where their technology needs to interact with the system differently. And because we are a vast country with much rural area, and in some cases, satellite-only communications, we have a lot of different considerations to be bringing to that conversation. Our Canadian Radio Television Communications Commission, the CRTC, is responsible for regulating work in this area, but it brings together all sorts of agencies who do the work. I think, in a nutshell, that's our context. The good news is that there's a lot of groundbreaking research happening in this area in Canada, some of it being funded by Accessibility Standards Canada and being done by an organization that is focused on people with disabilities, the Neil Squire Foundation, looking at what are the new technologies that are available and how is that advancing technology going to intersect with how we broadcast out alerts or receive information in terms of the emergency response systems like 911 and emergency services. They're looking closely at the technologies for sign language use in emergency calls, real-time texting, plain language, emergency communications, and more. And I think they released an important survey in 2024 that's going to give us a lot of information about the best way forward. And final slide. The big picture, I think, is that technology is advancing so rapidly, we have an opportunity, but also a challenge in having that infrastructure and connectivity required to keep up with the technology and actually provide an equitable service to all Canadians. Staying digitally connected is one thing, but remaining connected as people, governance and government oversight, service providers and industry experts, and those with lived experience, that's another thing altogether, and a challenge that I think we face universally. I think, though, we have to always not lose sight of the fact that for people with disabilities, these are matters of life and death, and often we are left behind. And I think that's why both in organizational planning and as individuals, we have to do our own emergency plans. I know I have not done mine, you know, and I think we think about it, but we don't always act because it's something I think we don't want to think about. But it's incredibly important, and one of the things we have to do is really drill home that message that we have to be our first line of response.
Thank you, Stephanie. I would say congratulations for Canada for such excellent work. I think it seems like you are doing in the right way, you know, like really like cooperating with the people with disabilities, and also like individuals themselves take responsibility of the emergency situations themselves as well. So it's about, you know, vice and versa communication about the needs, but also to help ourselves and yourselves and each other. And I think it's really, in Canada, it seems like when we're talking about crises, of course, we are talking about, in your case, in your histories, environmental emergency cases, and of course, in Europe, we are more talking about some parts. We are talking about like safety issues, but as well environmental crises, what kind of natural disasters. But the idea is the same, that we have to prepare ourselves and make cooperation and make sure that fast information, instructions, everything is understandable, quick and accessible and easy for everyone. And we make sure that nobody is not left alone. So then we move on from Canada to European level back again. And I'm very happy to ask on stage Alejandra Moledo, Deputy Director of the European Disability Forum. Now, Alejandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's good to be the last one, because I will get to echo many of the issues that were already raised. I will try to summarize the kind of the systemic barriers that persons with disabilities face in emergency response and preparedness as well, and with some recommendations and maybe some examples that we see in Europe. The barriers have already been mentioned. The first one would be like information barriers, and here the elements that we need to take into consideration are multi-channel. We need to ensure that information comes from different channels, including broadcasting, including public warning systems, including social media. I mean, the more channels that this emergency information is spread, the better. Also for people with disabilities, we shouldn't forget that. And then we need to bring the multimodality element that we were already discussing, so ensuring that the information is provided in more than one sensory channel, so written, audio, and in different modes of communication, including obviously sign language, including easy to read as well. So multi-channel, multimodality, and understandability. Also, it's important to have easy to read format, if possible, obviously, but it's also important that the information that is provided is provided in an understandable way, so in plain language, not exceeding a level of complexity that would exclude people from understanding the elements of the core of that information. So having, you know, there are many standards and AI tools that we can use nowadays to ensure this kind of understandability. So one action per sentence, clear language, avoiding acronyms. I mean, you know many of these kind of requirements. Then if we move on this, Lydia already mentioned, I believe, the importance of the broadcasting information. I feel that we haven't learned, unfortunately, much from the COVID pandemic. We do have a legislation in Europe, in addition to the European Accessibility Act, the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, that requires in the article about accessibility that emergency information broadcasted is accessible for persons with disability. And in a recent report by the European Broadcasting Union, which is the association representing public broadcasters, it was found that only 49% of the organizations that answered the survey actually had any kind of rule or protocol when it comes to broadcasting emergency information or important warnings through this public television. So this is something that is required by law, but unfortunately it hasn't been picked up yet by the organizations. The other main barrier, which we already touched upon, is communication. And I hear Ima already explained the provisions of the Accessibility Act, which tries to ensure this multimodality, so voice, real-time text, and where video is provided, total conversation. Unfortunately, in Europe, we don't see much of an appetite for video communication, so unfortunately, in this regard, we don't see total conversation being picked up, but we really hope that soon, although the standards are being late, we will have interoperable real-time text in Europe, and very soon as well, real-time text with the emergency call centers, the so-called PSAPs, the public safety answering points. Because as Inma said, I mean, the idea, the objective of the legislation is to ensure that you call the 112 emergency number either by voice or by real-time text, or hopefully one day by total conversation, and then the emergency center will be able to handle your call in that specific mode. So that's the idea behind it, but the Accessibility Act is also complemented by the telecoms rules, and here there are important elements as well, which is the provision of and the affordability of those relay services, so video relay services for sign language communication with an interpreter, but obviously this should be possible to call emergency communication through an interpreter, but usually in a case of an emergency, the individual prefers to call the emergency services as soon as possible without intermediate, but this possibility of using a relay service should be there, either by video relay service, or to use sign language, or text relay services. And another important element of this telecom rule, which is very important for people with disabilities, and it's thanks as well to the, let's say, the progress on the technology infrastructure, is the caller location, which is also very, very useful for many people with disabilities to, like when you call the emergency service, immediately the call transmit your location to the emergency center. So that is something that is obviously thanks as well to the infrastructure. And moving on to other elements, there is the lack of protocols that I believe that in the case of emergency we need to bear in mind when the responders, I mean, we need to bear in mind the time of reaction that we have for an emergency, but that will depend the kind of support that the responders will do. So there are emergencies in which there is no time to, for example, to consult with disability organizations. There are emergencies in which there is some time. There are emergencies in which there is a little bit more time. So depending on that time frame that we have in emergencies, this protocol should establish how to address the specific situation of persons with disabilities. And that's why it's important to have those protocols in place, so to deal with, for example, evacuation situations, or how to find, the accessible transport to mobilize the people from one place to another. So all those elements should be there, and we see them also in some of the plans that are being developed in Europe. And here I would like to make a small side note, which is the fact that in many emergencies that we know that people with disabilities are among the most affected, but within the disability community, there are communities that are even more affected. And here, for example, we very much remember the cases during COVID in people living in residential institutions that became hotbeds of infections, and then the response of the emergency didn't reach them. And we've seen in floodings in my own hometown in Valencia that people in residential institutions, older people, were among the victims of those natural disasters. So this is once again another example of why we need to move from institution to support to the independent living in the community. Sorry, I had to say. In terms of another barrier that we always identify is the physical accessibility, and here maybe I want to, although it's not it's a bit strange to ask the moderator, but it's very interesting that the builders in Finland need to already take into account and to include the shelters. So I wonder whether those shelters are covered by the accessibility standards for buildings in Finland. So having this kind of accessibility, maybe we need an accessibility standard for shelters as well. I don't know, Terry.
Yes, exactly. They have to be accessible. Yeah,
That's
even
right.
though the threshold is a little bit higher, but then they put a ramp during the crisis time. They are lacking accessible toilets, I know, and it's a problem in practice. So there are some, you know, some practical things still lacking, but they are accessible. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to conclude as well, is really good, and we'll need to, obviously we'll need to learn, and we keep very close cooperating with our Finnish member, because definitely the disability movement there is really advanced when it comes to preparedness, and which is my final my final point, the kind of the fifth barrier that I believe we should address. I must confess that I don't have my preparedness plan. We are in the process to do it as well, but I believe it's important that we raise this and promise that next year, if we come back, we will have our plan as individuals, because it's important as well that for us, for people with disabilities, we need to plan as well very well in advance, because we need to bear in mind whether we need to take into consideration our assistive technologies, our potential medication, etc., etc. So it's important that we, as people with disabilities and also disability organizations, we work on building these individual preparedness plans. But it's also important that the state, the regions, and the municipalities develop their own preparedness plan, and obviously any organization as well. And here, the EU has adopted an EU preparedness strategy, in which there is one action concerning persons with disabilities, to develop guidance and to develop training on for the responders of crisis on how to address the needs of people with disabilities. So definitely we will be learning from Canada and from countries that have already advanced in this regard. Yeah. So we will be very happy to take this example, what is being done in Ukraine because of the war, and countries such as Spain or Valencia, for example, they have developed their protocols and their preparedness plans. So it's important that we all learn from each other. I leave it there. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Very interesting. I got an information from AccessibleEU team that we have extra 10 minutes. I don't know if I'm correct. I see this 0 timing now. 10 more minutes. Okay, yeah, okay. So before we are going to the summary, and we have an excellent summary coming up from Petra. We are really looking forward for that. But before that, I would like to really give a floor to the audience, because there are such a great panelists here and speakers. So please, audience, if you have any questions, one hand is rising there, the other one is rising there. So if somebody hands a microphone for them, that would be great. Two questions from the audience. Microphones are on the table.
Okay, does it work? Okay. My name is Gary Wagner, Vienna. Just briefly a remark to all the presentations. It's a tremendous good work you're doing, but sometimes I believe this is a legislation from the last century. 90% of my friends are not having any television anymore and not seeing television. I myself listening to radio 25 years ago. So I believe for future activities we have to take into account also real-time information. Secondly, the major problem, I believe, is data protection. It prevents that we collect data which indicates when the disaster strikes is available. We had in Germany the Ahrtal disaster 3 years ago, and I'm an expert on airplane crashes, and then we know exactly that at least 20 minutes or even 3 hours before the disaster starts, we know that we have to identify whether disabled people are available, what is the status, are they on holiday or not, and then we have to rescue them. not when the disaster strikes, but 3 hours before. And this data currently is not available. So this is for me the major problem. And lastly, 3 deaf people were shot in America because they were not wearing the blue scarf. The police were addressing them from behind and said, please stop. They could not see the police and could not listen to them. So we have a lot of issues regarding data protection, and I can't see currently any initiative to overcome that.
Comment from Lydia?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your information and experience regarding accessing information. Maybe in your circle, people are not watching the television or broadcast in any way. In Europe, it's a little bit different story in general. And one of the things we're looking at is you can't actually expect hard of hearing people to listen to the radio. I mean, a majority of us, actually, we need the text in the radio itself, live text as well. And there are, a lot of movements and advocacy work as well on this, especially in Sweden recently. So I know that, in Vienna maybe it's different for the circle, but in general, hard of hearing people, people with hearing loss and people using sign language will not be listening to the radio. So we still need the access to broadcast. It may not be in traditional way, it's now digital or whatever, but we're still watching it. Thank you.
So yeah, I fully agree with what Lydia said. I mean, this is why it's important to ensure this the information is provided multi-channel. So obviously there are some people that do not watch TV. I don't watch TV, for example, but there are other ways in which the information can be transmitted, alert, SMS, on social media. I mean, different types of alerts can be put in place. What is important is to be in as many channels as possible to reach as many people as possible, obviously. And concerning data protection, for example, there are elements that obviously respecting data protection need to be very in mind. And for example, the preparedness plan that Valencia adopted after the floodings of 2024, while respecting data protection, they inform the firefighters on the location of people with reduced mobilities. I mean, without obviously saying the names or so forth, but at least the firefighters, in case of another natural disaster, they will know where are the people with reduced mobility, and they will come with the necessary means to evacuate them if needed and not being left behind, as unfortunately happened in the flooding. So while respecting, there are different ways in which data protection can be balanced with the superior interest of saving the people, obviously.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions, and Alejandra and Lydia. Then one question from the audience.
Well, I actually have a comment. I think we need more statistical data of how disasters affect people with disabilities to get a bigger picture of what is going on so we can improve services and know how people are actually affected by this event. For example, we know that 48% of victims in Spain, of natural disasters in Spain, were older people, but we don't know how many had disabilities.
Any comments?
Yes, data is very important, but I would expect by now we have had more than enough data to know how people are being affected. We've been going on, Alejandro even longer than me, discussing the issues regarding persons with disabilities. So today, it's not about gathering any more data. Yeah, we continue gathering more data, but we should know and we should have learned the lessons already.
Thank you. And now we have 3 minutes left for this panel. And now it would be great that Petra can have a summary with her picture.
Okay, I will move in front of you. Klaus, do you need a minute in the end, I guess?
Okay, so let's do a very, very quick summary. Summarizing this panel focuses on, of course, all our togetherness responsibility of accessibility in times of crisis. And I think the panel showed us very well that, first of all, on the European level, the European Accessibility Act gives us a lot of power because it's an empowerful act to make sure that the digital communication systems are accessible. And I think that brings us also to this whole process of emergency reactions. We heard that the group of people with disabilities is, as you all know, very diverse. And if we talk about people who are hard of hearing, we already have a high diversity. And within the disabilities, we have a lot of different kinds of needs. So the needs of people with disabilities must be taken into consideration. What did we learn from crises we already faced, like COVID? We learned that emergency information was not accessible, especially for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but also for others. So we learned that the communication barriers must be removed. Information must be accessible on a multi-channel level: hearing, seeing, reading, text, understandable language. We also have to look at our emergency preparedness. So people with disabilities must be involved in the planning of emergency plans, but there should also be person-centered plans to be evacuated at the right time, to know that where are people with disabilities who must be evacuated and brought to shelters. The shelters have to be, of course, accessible. So, and also the first responders have to be trained. So I think this summarizes all these great things we heard from all over the world. And now, Klaus, back to you.
Thank you very much. I know it's late in the evening, but as we always say, the best comes at the end. So stay here. Thank you very much for your contributions. I think, what do you want to say?
Thank you, Klaus. No, I forgot to promote a project that we are doing on disability inclusive emergency response. I mentioned that the EU has this action, but we are contributing to it. So, and many of our members, as I mentioned, in the Netherlands, the Baltic countries, we are many organizations working on this preparedness. So if you have examples and so forth, please do reach out because together, yeah, we can build it better. Thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. I think this is one of the most underestimated and underrated topics that we have. And the panel showed us that it's very important how we can address this and that we should address this and how we can address this. Crisis, I think we know all of the changing climate and these crises will appear a little bit more often on the agenda as we want to really imagine it. Yeah. So thank you very much for this very interesting discussion, and we change now to the next panel. And as I said before, during the change of the seats, yeah, the best comes at the end. The best comes at the end means we have a reception after this, yeah. But José Luis will tell us more about it. Yeah. Please, Guillaume. Where are the panelists? There are the panelists. Please enter the floor. Ah, yeah. I don't know how it works. Anybody knows how this works?
No, I have to go this way. There's stairs here on the left. I have to go down
Okay.
this way. Oh.
Super. Thanks a lot.
Come on.
So last but not least, we will talk about technological advances for accessibility emergency preparedness. That means, sorry. That means we are talking about technology, we are talking about ICT, we are talking about ways how to cope with this problem. I'm coming out of ICT industry, and I know that ICT is not covering all the problems and is not the one and only solution, but I think ICT can help us to overcome the problems that we are facing in this field. And while they are sitting down, I want to say that Guillaume is the technical expert of AccessibleEU. We are working together also within the framework of the AccessibleEU project. He is a technical expert specializing in the translation of accessibility legislation and standards into concrete technical requirements for products and digital services. With a strong background in ICT accessibility, testing methodologies and harmonized standards such as the EN 301549, he supports organizations, authorities, and industry in understanding what compliance actually means in practice. So I will hand over to you, and the 5 minutes, we will put the 5 minutes that we are longer here at the end for you.
Okay.
The floor is yours. Please.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure for me to moderate this last session of the day. A very long day today, first day of the 3 days conference. Today we're going to talk about technological advances for accessible emergency preparedness. As Klaus said, my name is Guillaume Dufresne. I work with AccessibleEU, the AccessibleEU team, and I will be your moderator for this session. Today, now, we are going to explore how accessibility transforms emergency preparedness, from training and communication systems to devices as well. So today, over the next few minutes, several minutes, we are going to try to answer a simple but I think powerful question. How can technology can actually contribute to ensure that no one is left behind during a crisis? And for that, I'm really delighted to introduce our 3 speakers for this panel, each of whom will bring, I'm sure, a unique perspective and experience for this conversation. So I'll start with Lourdes González Perea, who's head of the Technological Accessibility Department at Fundación 11. Lourdes has been working in the field of accessibility since 2003, specializing in projects related to accessible technologies, education, and inclusive communication. We also have Wolfgang Kampischler, sorry for the bad pronouncing your name, who's chair of Technical and Operations Committee at the European Emergency Number Association. Wolfgang is also the initiator and developer of DES 112, which is a private initiative dedicated to providing accessibility to Austrian emergency services. Welcome, Wolfgang. And we also have Sabine Lobnig, who's the director for communications at the Mobile and Wireless Forum, which is the international association of companies with an interest in mobile and wireless communications. Before the presentation will start, I just remind that the audience that you will have the opportunity to ask questions after the speakers have finished their presentations. Let's begin with our first speaker, Lourdes, who's going to share how training programs can empower people with disabilities and improve real-world emergency outcomes. So Lourdes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Guillaume. It's for me a pleasure to participate in this interesting panel. I'd like to start asking a question, a rhetoric question. Would you know how to help me if right now there is an emergency here? Well, next, please. Fundación 11 began to work in emergencies 20 years ago because we participated in European project called CILIFO. CILIFO means Iberian Center for the Prevention of Forest Fire. And in this project, developed from Spain and Portugal, Fundación 11 has an interesting role in integrating our knowledge about accessibility and about how to assist people with disabilities in case of emergencies. In this project, Fundación 11, for example, developed different awareness raising events around Spain and Portugal. We designed an online course about how to assist people with disabilities in the context of forest fire. We developed as well a mobile application with tips about how to react if there is a forest fire and how to help people with disabilities in this situation. And finally, we wrote a white paper with the knowledge get in this project. Next. Regarding the online course, we organized the structure in 5 modules. For example, we include modules about how to guide a blind person or how to move a person that is using a wheelchair, and how to communicate if the person have problem to use the voice and different situations. In these courses that we developed in 3 occasions, 3 editions, we had almost 2,000 students, and more than 65% were people that work directly in emergencies. What very, very interesting to interchange knowledge regarding this topic. Next, please. Regarding the white paper, if you want to access to the content, you can use the QR code that we are showing in the screen, and you can find as well in the digital library from Fundación 11 website. And this white paper is available in 3 languages, Spanish, Portuguese, and of course English, and it is free for all. Next, please. This knowledge was very interesting for Fundación 11 because we open to other situations, for example, floodings or other environment, for example, in the case of the beach. For example, we organize for Guardia Civil, civil guard in Spain, a training specific to help people with disabilities that is enjoying of the experience of St. James Way, El Camino de Santiago in Spain. For the Red Cross, we organize an online course about how to assist people with disabilities that are enjoying on the beach. For the Autonomous University of Barcelona, Fundación 11 prepared different awareness events about how to evacuate correctly the campus if there is an emergency and there are people with disabilities, because it is very important. And today, we gave awareness events for Spanish police office, the Policía Nacional in Spain, about how to assist people with disabilities that need help. Finally, for the government of Spain, Fundación 11 collaborated in the design of the official protocol about how to assist and how to communicate with people with disabilities in the case of emergency. Next, please. Finally, I'd like to offer different examples, but in the previous panel, Alejandro, Lydia summarized very well the needs of people with disabilities. But for example, if in this room there is an emergency, it's very important that the person that want to help me identify themselves, because, for example, if in this room there is a policeman, it's important that the policeman say me, hello, my name is Klaus, for example, and I am a policeman. I'm going to help in this situation because there is an emergency. It's important as well guide correctly people with visual disability. The policeman, for example, should offer the arm or the shoulder to guide me correctly. And if there is a service dog, it's important that person with a disability manage the guide dog, for example, because we know perfectly my dog and I can, how my guide dog can react in the case of an emergency. Okay, next. Finally, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lourdes. Now you showed us several examples of trainings and initiatives for the inclusion of people with disabilities in emergency preparedness. Now I'd like to ask you a question based on your experience. In your opinion, what's the most effective enabler you've seen that would make emergency preparedness training really inclusive for people with disabilities?
For me, the most important thing is that people with disabilities participate in this training because obviously in our team there are people without disabilities, but Fundación ONCE always include in the training people with disabilities because the student can connect more and better with our necessities.
Okay, thank you very much, Lourdes. Now let's move to Wolfgang. Wolfgang, who's the chair of the Technical and Operations Committee at the European Emergency Number Association. And now Wolfgang is going to guide us through the most recent advances in accessible emergency communications. Wolfgang, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Guillaume, for the introduction, and welcome to Vienna. Actually, I'm from Austria because I've seen in the translations, in the live translation, that I'm from Australia. I'm from Austria, and yeah, welcome to Vienna. And today I'm presenting INA, and I will talk about accessible emergency communications. And I can. And actually, I start where the previous session actually ended. If you remember what Ima was introducing, the European Accessibility Act, she was mentioning total conversation. And if you look at what we have today, it's just voice only. It's traditional 112, 911, which relies on hearing and speaking, which excludes millions of people. So what we actually need is a switch from this traditional 112, 911 system, which is basically voice, to total conversation, which just means we put audio, video, and real-time text together. So audio as a standard communication, video for sign language and situational awareness. So it's not only sign language, it's also just to see, okay, what's happening in the surroundings. And real-time text, which is character by character, so it's not like SMS, it's really real-time text, and it's immediate, and it can also be used for silent communication. It's also quite interesting aspect that those things can be used by anyone, and depending on the situations. So this creates actually equivalency, so every user gets the same level of service, and that's where we want to head to. And in my next slide, I talk a little bit about the ecosystem, so what's actually needed and what's actually currently standardized. I'm doing a lot of standardization work as well, and recently finished a new harmonized standard, which is now in the next phase. It's EN 303-919, And the next phase means it's being now reviewed by the National Standardization Organization, and it's about accessible emergency communication. And there we do have different types. We have the devices, and as mentioned by Lydia, I guess, it should be a kind of native thing. So no apps to download, no registrations. So it should be part of your smartphone, yeah, so native applications for audio, for video, and for real-time text. In addition, provide rich data, which means precise location information, perhaps also language and modality information. So just telling the PSAP or the Emergency Communication Center what language and modality you want to use for this communication. And of course, capabilities for multimedia, which means audio, video, and text. The next thing is the service providers. So they need to support this. If you have a mobile device, it perhaps already supports real-time text. And before that session, I was talking to Daniel, and I showed him how it works with real-time text in Austria. So you can actually text from one device to the other device, not to the emergency services right now, but at least between the devices. You do already have emergency communication based on real-time, communication based on real-time text in the devices. So service provider is also an important part of it. Then how do we get to the most appropriate PSAP, which may not be the nearest one. It might be the one that supports actually audio, video, real-time text, for instance, or the language and modality that is needed. So there's some routing in between. And depending on the country, it means that you just have a single PSAP, that's nice, or it could also mean that you have, like in Austria, federal states, and they all run their own PSAPs. Last but not least, the PSAP needs to support the proper technology. So we need language and modality, and actually also trained call takers to know how to deal with video and how to deal with real-time text. And I think from my perspective, global standards are most important here, because they ensure that wherever you are, you can access emergency services. And that's a great thing. And as I said, we're just waiting for the feedback for this harmonized standard at European level. And then if it gets published, it's actually the next step forward to get this universal service. Just to close my presentation with something that is already in place. So a big part of the ecosystem is already in place in Austria. So we have a fully operational service called DEC 112. It's Digital Emergency Communication 112, which provides accessibility based on currently over-the-top application, because till now we didn't have the text available for emergency communication. And it connects you directly police, fire, and ambulance. So it's technology that is there. It's based on those standards that I mentioned before. So it's not something we need to invent. It's something that's already there. It provides location information. It provides health data if people want to provide this data. And it's bidirectional chat. And as I said, currently over the top, and it actually acts as a bridge between now and the future, perhaps next year. We have at least audio and real-time text available, and it can then be used for emergency communication, at least to 112, I guess. And yeah, until then, in Austria, it's still available, and I think we keep this up and running. And yeah, we got an INA award in 2023, which was actually a great acknowledgement of the work. And yeah, with that, I conclude my presentation. And if you have any further questions, especially about standardization work that is going on in Europe, then just drop me a line. I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Now you mentioned in your presentation the work you do on harmonized standard. So I have a question to you. For you, how do you think that those harmonized standards actually help ensure that that trained users can actually access emergency services in a crisis situation?
Great question. I think the most important thing is to know the capabilities of the device and to work with it, let's say, on an everyday basis. So that's why I was saying it's good if you have a standardized way for these different types of media. So especially texting and video for sign language. And in school, I learned that I need to dial an emergency number. In Austria, it's not just one, it's a bunch of numbers that I have to know, and I learned to tell what, where, and when. Yeah, and I think this just needs to be done in a different way, perhaps in the future. And if you know, okay, what kind of capabilities does my device have if I buy it, then I can just text those information. So I think it's great, yeah, if you have a standardized way that works all over the world. Like just sending emails, it really helps in a critical situation.
Okay, thank you. I have another question as well. In your presentation, you were talking about real-time text, video, and emergency calls. Now, what, in your view, what do you see as the key action for emergency services to actually fully implement these communication tools across Europe?
I think there are a few of key actions, not just one, but the most important one, I think, is the shift in technology. So emergency communications is not voice only. Yeah, so I think that the emergency services need to switch to broadband packet switched infrastructure first, and then also support these different types of media. So they cannot just rely on just one type of media, voice, as I said before, and was mentioned by Ima. Total conversation means all the three types. So this needs to be implemented on their side, and I think it requires also some kind of training to prepare for these new types of media.
Cool, thank you. We now turn to those famous devices that all of us, millions of people, rely on every day, especially during emergencies. So our third speaker today is Sabine Lobnik, and she's going to introduce the GARI database and explain to us a bit how accessibility features in devices can make a critical difference for crisis situations. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. And actually, yes, I think Wolfgang gave me the perfect introduction already, because indeed it's important that you know about what the device can do, and in particular to also familiarize yourself with the device before the emergency hits. So Guillaume mentioned in the beginning, I work for the Mobile and Wireless Forum, and we are active in many different areas, but have also been looking at the device accessibility since 2008, so almost 20 years of accumulated experience. The visible output of that is the Global Accessibility Reporting Initiative, or in short, GARI. And GARI is an online database where you can go to select or to choose an accessible device. So at any given moment, you will find information on accessibility features of about 1,500 mobile phones, tablets, wearables, smart TVs that are available in the market today. And most importantly, you will find a very long or very comprehensive list of accessibility features that are available in those devices. And you will also find additional information like feature videos that will inform you on what kind of feature helps in what kind of situation. How do I find that feature in my device? How do I activate it, and how do I deactivate it? We also have feature guides that are intended to guide the user a little bit in the big number of accessibility features that we have today. And for this session, I picked out the GARI Quick Guide on features that help in difficult situations. And this feature guide is structured around what should I be doing with my device before the emergency. So what all of us should have already done or will do right after this session. Helpful apps and tools that help in emergencies. What I need to know about the power supply and the protection of my device. Features that come in handy during an emergency, and then a quick setup list and links to learning videos to help me further. But then what should I be doing with my device before the emergency? So I should be aware of the emergency shortcut or set up the emergency shortcut, have in my device saved the emergency contact if I don't want to call the emergency services right away, but maybe I just want to call somebody for help. Have the information, the health information, the medical ID if I want to. Have the handset-based location activated. I think Alejandro mentioned it in the session before. It's very, very useful if the emergency services can find me by locating my device. But I need to allow the device to broadcast my location. Then know about whether or not my device is capable of satellite communication and satellite emergency services. And then also have important documents either saved on my device or available on cloud storage via my device. Because if the case arises that your house is destroyed and everything in it, it might be very, very valuable that you have the most important documents available. Then in terms of what kind of features are handy in the emergency, again, you should know about them before it comes to the emergency. So go through the accessibility features in your device and think what might come in handy, and then use it once or twice, just to be familiar with it, if you're not using it in any case on a daily basis. So some of those handy features could be voice control, that I just talk to my device and things happen, text-to-speech, live captions, if maybe my hearing aid is broken or I don't have it with me, noise detection, to be aware of the surrounding noises and sounds, even if I cannot hear them, and very simple things like the magnifier or the torch function on your device. So the invitation to all of you is have a look at the accessibility features, either explore them in your own device or take the shortcut by going to the GARI database and just look through the comprehensive list. Today we list almost 200 features. Some of them might surprise you. They are not, strictly speaking, an accessibility feature, but from the disability community we have heard that they come in handy and they are used as accessibility feature. So have a look there. Get some ideas on what you might need if you come into an emergency or difficult situation. Or look up your own device on the database to understand what that device actually can already do for you today, and explore the learning videos that we also have on the website. And then, of course, we are always happy to hear from you, whether you find the information on the website useful, whether you would like to get involved in evolving the database in the future. The contact details are here at the end, and we are happy to hear from you and about you.
Thank you very much, Sabine. And congratulations, it's a great initiative, Gary. I really love it. And on that, I want to know as well a little bit more in your view, like how can we make sure that the accessible features or the mobile phones, for instance, can become obligatory, mandatory? Is there any way to monitor this from your perspective? Can you talk a bit about this? I'm curious about your thoughts.
I would say they are already obligatory. So on one hand, we have already for a very long time, we have legislation in the US where some of the features have become obligatory. Now with the EAA and the very detailed Annex 1, many of those features are already in the regulations, so there is no question or not whether we want to have them in the devices. Most of them, I would say, are already prescribed by law. The challenge we have, and I think that was mentioned also before in the panel, is informing people about it. Because yes, it might be in the law, but 90% of the end consumers still don't know about it. And even worse, they might have heard about it, but then again, they never used it. And so when they come in a situation where it becomes critical to use that feature, they don't know how to. It starts with that I do not need to log in into my device to call emergency services. On every device implemented is the shortcut so that you can use emergency service without logging in. Most consumers don't know about it. So our challenge is not making the devices accessible. To a large extent they are today. It's informing the consumer or giving the consumer the critical information they need to best use the devices.
Thank you. I think that's a very important point what you just say. Importance of involving users, letting them know about this. I'm also wondering about the cooperation between the users, emergency services providers, policymakers, how to make them work together in all of this, and how an initiative like Gary can actually help on that, contribute to that, and make advance things a bit.
That's that's always a bit challenging because we have many, many different moving parts. I think Wolfgang can in German we would say sing a song about it. So getting them all on the table, I'm not sure that the Gari database as such can help in that. What we can provide is the information on the devices, because again, the features are there. Now it's a question about using them. For the emergency services, again, probably having a common outreach. I'm not sure that we will be able to really get together and have the promotion of 112 always together with then what the service providers are doing for emergency services and what the manufacturers are doing. But ideally, yes, we would have all of that in one central source of information. So what we provide is one central source of information on the device accessibility. If we could add the services and the emergency services on top of that, that of course would be ideal. So working towards it, but we haven't found the golden key yet.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sabine. I think we are very good with the time. I think it's 18:11. I'd like to invite the room, the audience, to please let me know if you have any questions. Any questions in the audience? Yeah, I see someone more in the back raising. Yeah, please, you have the micro in front of you.
Hello, this is Martin from Austria. I would have questions, particularly to Wolfgang, concerning the DECT 112. How is it nowadays when you do an emergency call? It is not only about stating your situation and get the ambulance here, but it's also about getting help until the ambulance arrives. Is also this, are also these aspects already covered in DECT 112, or so to go through the whole protocols and procedures, or what is already covered in it?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'm just providing, let's say, the technology, so I'm the messenger. I actually don't know that much about how it's being used in the PSAPs during an emergency. But to answer your question, so it's a bidirectional chat, and as far as I know, if there's a medical situation, the emergency services, they are just asking according to a protocol. And what they just do is, instead of asking it verbally or speaking, they text with the person, and then they get that information back. So it's bidirectional, it's interactive. It may take perhaps a little bit more time because people need to text instead of speaking, but it's considered and it's being used.
Thank you. A second question would also be, just maybe, I don't know if you know it, in the Alps region, so starting from Tyrol, but also within Bavaria and Italy, there is the EU Alps SOS app. So it's not it's not focused on accessibility, but does it use the same interfaces, or is it completely special?
Thanks. That's really a great question, and as far as I know, those applications and a lot of other applications, they are just creating their own ecosystem. Yeah? So they are based on proprietary solutions, and you can only use this app with a specific backend connected to the emergency services or PSAPs. So the big difference between those apps and DEC 112 is that DEC 112 can easily be replaced with other applications that use the same interface. And there is a technical specification for that interface. It's published by ETSI, so it's a European standard. Great that you asked that question, because I forgot to mention that using DEC 112 or introducing it in Austria led to a couple of things that were quite interesting. So first of all, they figured out that they need to change the Telecommunications Act, because text-based emergency services were not considered there so far. So there are a lot of things people learned by just introducing this very simple application, which is based on standards and which actually uses the complete ecosystem behind that I mentioned before. So you can simply replace this application with a native solution that is built into the smartphone and connects via a service provider to the PSAP. So they just use the same interface technology-wise. So that's actually the big difference. I think when we look at those applications, they should just follow the same standards, because that would make, let's say, the solutions much broader. Yeah, you can use those different things, and if you know it, if you use such an application on a daily basis, for instance, then you're used to it, and it's easier to work with it. And for the PSAP, it makes no difference. They just see it in the same way. They get the location information, and they get either text or audio, video, whatever. So that's the great thing of just focusing on standard-based solutions. And standards are there. Just look at it, and if you don't know, ask me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Carsten from Empirica, and a small research company based in Bonn. So I would like to, at the end of the last session, earlier session, we talked briefly about data privacy as a barrier to some notions or some concepts for improving accessibility of emergency services. So I would like, I understand that question to Wolfgang, that DEC 112, that optionally then users of the app can allow then health data to be transmitted to the service provider. So I would like to ask you what your experience with that is, and is this contributed data, or is it then actually connected to health online health card or something? Maybe also a question to you, Lord, whether this issue, data protection, also came up in your project. Like, I understand that you also, within Kilifo, that you also have an app developed. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that question. So data privacy is very important, and the DEC 112 solution just has the capability that users can store their medical information on their device. So it's not stored anywhere else, it's just stored on the device, and if they would like to provide it, they need to opt in, let's say. It's not done automatically, so they need to first provide that information and then say, okay, I want to share it. And the data, as I said, is just on the device. We don't know it. We just forward everything from the device to the emergency services, and they use it or not. So that's and there's no other, let's say, connection to other information that is stored somewhere else. So it's just from the device, voluntary basis, and it gets to the emergency services.
Okay. I see that Klaus is cautiously approaching. Do we have time? I have one final question for Lourdes, if that's okay. There is time?
I also
yes?
have one question. I'm sorry to say that. Yeah, okay. It's regarding the panel. Perhaps I was unattentive, but we spoke in the last panel about different types of disabilities, and for example, these standards, or the standard from ETSI now, this harmonized standard that we have, does this harmonized standard also cover relay services, for example, for hard of hearing of deaf persons, or does it also cover, for example, the need for being translated for blind persons, for example, that blind persons can use it, the accessibility features that are built in all of our smartphones, so that I can use it with these accessibility features?
Yes, thanks. Great question. So just looking at the standard and relay services, yes, that was an important part. So the idea is that people can actually provide their preferred relay service and put it into their device, and it's being forwarded to the emergency services that they can use and conference those services in. So it's not available right now, it's just part of the standard. Again, need to say that we wait for the feedback within the next 3 months from the national standardizations organizations, but relay services are covered. The other question that's more a topic, I think, of the capabilities of the device, so was what we were dealing with this accessible emergency communication standard was more the technology behind. Yeah, so you get these 3 types of media, like audio, video, and text covered, and for sure you can use translation services built into the device. Or if you have special accessible devices, they just need to implement the standard behind there so that it can be transmitted to the PSAP and can be used at the PSAP.
But is total conversation a part of the?
Yes, I need to. It's very important. Total conversation is not number 4 in different types of media. So it just means that you combine audio, video, and text together in a single session. That is total conversation, and they need to be synchronized. So this was mentioned by Ima as well. That's very important. It's not another kind of way of talking to a PSAP. It's just combine those 3 things in a single conversation, make sure that they are synchronized. That's covered, yes.
Yes, okay. So
If I may, I have a question as well now to some of other speakers like Lourdes. In your presentation, like you gave a lot of examples of lots of good practices around trainings in emergency preparedness. Now I'd like to know if, from your perspective, how can we scale this up so that those good practices that you shared in Spain can actually be implemented and exist in many, many more countries?
I think, for example, that AccessibleEU is a good space to share the knowledge around Europe, and of course the different projects developed in cooperation. For example, for Fundación 11, CILIFO project was very, very important to organize the knowledge, to share with other partners. And I think that the key is work together, organize different working groups to continue research, because, for example, in the case of emergency, not all the knowledge is clear. For example, this week I received a call to ask me, in the case of emergencies and the person is, for example, in the bed of the helicopter, how to do with the guide dog? I don't know, because the person in this situation can't manage the guide dog. We need to share the knowledge, we need to share the experience, and of course, create different protocols to organize the information.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lourdes. Unless there are some last questions from the audience, I'm going to thank the 3 of you, Lourdes, Sabine, Wolfgang, for your sharing your insights this afternoon. And I'm going to pass the floor to our beloved Klaus for some concluding statements.
Thank you. There was a misunderstanding with the time. I'm sorry. Yeah. So,
no problem.
So I showed up a little bit too early. Yeah. Thank you very much for this very interesting and fruitful, I think, discussion that we had with new insights. I know some of the things I know since long time. For example, the GARI. GARI is an initiative that is on the market since more than 10 years, I think. I'm right or not? Almost 20. Okay. So I'm between I'm the last barrier before you can go out for drinks and all this stuff. But there are 3 persons that want to say some final words, the famous last words now. The one is Wilfried Kainz from the Zero Project. Please. Thank you, Klaus.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for a wonderful first day. I would like to say a few words because AccessibleEU is now for the second time here and presents the most recent findings, this time on crisis response. 2 years ago, they were there to promote the Digital Accessibility Act. And they're also not only here, but they're also sponsors of the networking dinner, which is going to happen right now. So, José Luis, please come with me. And I want to thank you, and maybe you just tell us what you're looking for now in the networking dinner, besides food and drinks.
That is, well, I think we can continue with this interesting discussion. Maybe, of course, as a networking dinner, of course, create a great network. Talk with, we are at your disposal from the AccessibleEU team, also from our colleagues from Fundación 11. And well, among every one of you, I think it's a good opportunity to continue discussing this important, this great topic that I think if we work together, we will get farther. It will be easier to get a more accessible world. So thank you so much for attending. And in this sense, don't go away, and please, we meet you at the...
There's one more thing. One more thing, yeah. Perhaps do you want to...
Yes, of course. The dinner is so expensive, we have a second sponsor. And Nora, please come here. It's also a pan-European initiative from the European Social Fund. It's called Support, and Nora is going to have 90 seconds to explain what Support is. Nora, please.
Thank you, Wilfried. Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, I'm representing the Support project, which aims to reduce the long-term unemployment among persons with intellectual disabilities by scaling up and transferring socially innovative supported employment practices across 8 participating countries, naming Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Greece, Italy, Norway, Romania, and Spain. By the end of the project, we will employ 100 persons with disabilities in companies on the open labor market. And we are so happy to be here and to organize this networking event. And what I would like to invite you, if you are a company or you know any of the company who are willing to employ persons with disabilities, this project is the right place because we can provide grants for cover 80% of the wages of the involved persons with disabilities. And thanks to the supported employment practices, we provide ongoing support on the spot to retain the employment of persons with disabilities. So we are happy to be here and happy to discuss with you. We also have a stand next to the escalator. We are here tomorrow as well and on Friday. So if you are interested more, please come to our stand, and tonight we are here to discuss with you about the project and enjoy the dinner, the well-deserved dinner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now it's really time to announce what everybody is expecting. José Luis.
Okay, well, I thought you were going to say I was going to sing, but I'm not going to do any anymore.
you don't want to hear me singing. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for attending these interesting panels that we have organized from AccessibleEU in cooperation with Zero Project. And before going for the dinner to continue this interesting discussion, please, I would like to share. We would like to share with you our video announcing what AccessibleEU is, and well, just to know a little bit more, and maybe to sing the song of AccessibleEU. I don't know, maybe. So go ahead with the video, please.
Different people with and without disabilities carrying out daily activities in the city, demonstrating that accessibility is good for all.
The Europe I have in mind that leaves no one behind, neither below nor far away. It always has a better way. It's a Europe you can see, hear and feel, because that's how it should be. The Europe that is equal for everyone, that makes us equal one by one, that revolves around us, that moves toward us, that lifts us up, drives us and guides us, so that nothing can stop us from making our dreams come true. We move with you. We move with you.
The following logos are displayed: AccessibleEU Centre, European Commission, ONCE Foundation, ONCE Social Group, Johannes Kepler University Linz, Spanish Association for Standardization, European Network for Accessible Tourism, European Association of Service Providers for Persons with Disabilities.
Well, thank you so much, and see you downstairs in the networking dinner.
Join us, go on the website, look on LinkedIn. There's a group on LinkedIn on Accessible Europe. Everybody is invited to work together with us. I think I can tell it. Yeah, go on in social media. You will find us. Yeah, and Dr. Google will help you.